Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Hello, welcome to On the Corner of Main Street. Hi, Gary. Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, what's happening, everybody?
We're at 1 year now, right? I mean, this is the landmark.
1 year old episode, 1 year old podcast.
Yeah,
It's come a long way, hasn't it?
it's amazing.
Has.
It has been a fun thing. We started as something was really had no purpose at all, but just something that we thought could be a little bit of fun and without a real vision of what it could become. And now it seems to have gained a nice bit of traction. I get texts weekly of people that enjoyed various episodes. I had different follow-up questions about it. So I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying having different guests here, getting to hear their perspectives.
We love just hearing the feedback. I think that's the most important thing is getting the feedback from different listeners and them reaching out. And we hope for all of our guests to continue to reach out to us through all of our social media channels.
Yeah, it's so fun getting to know the listeners. Getting to know people, meeting them in the lobby, giving them the Las Vegas Club chips that we did a giveaway for.
Well, I like that people now email us to say, hey, can I come on the podcast? That's a compliment. People trying to promote themselves. So yeah, it's enjoyable, and I think we'll do another year at least. So I had a fun experience. I was at the first Golden Knights game back. Monday night,
Okay.
I went to the Golden Knights game, and there was like 2,600 people there. I'll give credit to T-Mobile and the Golden Knights themselves. Great job of social distancing. Felt very spread out. It was, no cash being accepted at the bars. You had to leave in pods, enter
really?
in pods. Yeah, so like at the end of the game, they're like, okay, your section has to wait. Yeah, some people weren't necessarily waiting, but for the most part, people were following it all. Everyone was wearing masks, and it was a good experience, and it was a great hell of a game. But it felt like they put on a show for their first game back. They weren't going to lose that one.
And how was the energy inside the building? Because you can't tell on TV right now with sports because they pipe in all the fan noise and different things like that. So how was the energy inside the building, inside T-Mobile?
So the energy was good. When the players came out, the energy was great. 2,600 people made a lot of noise. It sounded pretty good.
Okay.
Goals were good, but for 2.5 hours, it's tough to keep only 2,600 people engaged.
Right.
So there were moments when they were pumping in some noise, and
Okay.
even into this sort of partially empty stadium, and they were also playing a lot of music, which they always do at Golden Knights games
Right.
anyway. They still did all the fun things on the screen. It kind of felt normal, to be honest with you. It didn't have the same energy, but the game was a great game. There was 9 goals, and there was a lot going on. So I mean, overall, it was pretty good. And I was a little disappointed. Before the game, I went to Italy. It was my wife and I, one of the nights out, first nights out, especially for my wife. And we went to Italy for dinner, and nothing was open. I was shocked. At
Really?
Park MGM. I thought for the ice hockey, they would have at least opened something.
What
but
night was it? What day
It
of
was
the
Monday
week?
night.
Monday.
They had literally one stand in the whole of Italy was open.
Wow.
It was a shame. Bavets wasn't open.
So where'd you go?
We went to Shake Shack.
Nice.
But what was cool was that we went to, for the first time. I drove. We used to Uber to the games or take a car. I drove, and I parked at the MGM at the park. I parked at the park, and it was free. It was free. They got rid of charged parking at MGM.
Really?
And I'll be curious to see if they do it when there's 20,000 people back.
Right.
But for 2,000 people, it was a great experience. Just parking right there next to the stadium and walking across, it was pretty easy.
Yeah, I think all casino operators have to take a look at value now that tourism is starting to pick up going into March, and it's good to see people in it. I mean, we'll be busy this weekend as well.
Speaking of value, we have a guest who knows all about the value and has all the secrets, tips, and tricks. So let's jump in. Today we are joined by the best blackjack counter in the history of the game, gambler, author, and publisher. He publishes Las Vegas Advisor, one of the very first Vegas newsletters, and was inducted into the Blackjack Hall of Fame. Welcome, Anthony Curtis, to On the Corner of Main Street.
Thank you. I got to say right away that introduction. I've got a few friends who are going to be really angry when they hear that.
Is it true though?
It's not true.
Okay.
It's really not true. I mean, I know guys.
You're just saying that because
I
you don't
think
want
you're
that
humble.
record, yeah.
You know what? In my day, I was really good, and I mean, I was able to do it very well, and I could count very fast. But even in my prime, I knew guys that were better than me, and they're still out there. So, thanks for letting me get that out.
We'll let you clarify that. Thank you, and nice to see you. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today. It's great to see you after all this time. It has been a little while since I last got to see you.
Likewise.
You've been keeping okay?
Yeah. I mean, it just, what is there to do but lock yourself in your office and work?
Right.
So, it's hard for COVID to get in there. It's just all locked up.
Yeah. So tell us where you're from and how you ended up here in Vegas.
Well, let's see. I came to Vegas by way of L.A. So actually my publishing company, which, we specialize in a Las Vegas newsletter, the Las Vegas Advisor, and we do a lot of gambling books on various games. So I came from Huntington Beach, and my publishing company is called Huntington Press. So that kind of gives you a clue. But I am originally from the Detroit area. I'm from Dearborn, Michigan. Nice. And I was essentially born and raised there. I was a wrestler in Michigan. I was a pretty good wrestler. And I got a scholarship to a few places. I went to Duke originally and then UCLA. And as you can see, I'm making my way closer and closer to Vegas. All during that time, I'm at Duke University and I'm reading gambling books and skipping classes. So it was kind of preordained that this was going to happen. But I'm a Midwestern guy who ended up in California and then finally in Vegas.
Got it. So you were a wrestler, and I heard you on another podcast where you described your process of becoming a wrestler, but then also using that same sort of method of drilling strategy and learning. Is that as how you learned how to count cards and learn the whole blackjack strategy? Yeah,
I would say I'm a real advocate for that sport. It's one of the most difficult sports you can do if you're going to excel at it. And it requires, no matter how talented you are, it requires a lot of hard work and dedication. And it tends to, once you've gone through that, and I did it through high school and college, and once you've gone through that, you tend to carry that over to other things you do. So I think the time that I put in as a wrestler, as a kid, as a teenager, and in my early 20s, helped me a lot when I had goals and things that I wanted to accomplish, both in business and in gambling, and coming to Vegas, where all the smart guys come to Vegas, and you're fighting against the casinos for one, and when you're on my side of the table, and against other players who are trying to do what you're trying to do. So the parents who are out there, if you have a chance to get your son or even daughters these days into wrestling or martial arts, I highly recommend it.
It's great advice.
Yeah.
I'll definitely listen to that. But help me understand something. What's the connection here between Duke, you're studying blackjack, and then when do you start coming out to Vegas? Like, what's the connection in that in connecting those 2 points together?
Yeah, my thing when I was in Michigan, I actually in high school I was a 3-sport guy, and I did pretty well in all of them. Although wrestling, I was runner-up in the state in Michigan. I was second, lost in the finals, but
Okay.
I got to admit that. But I wanted to I also played football. I also ran track, and on a fairly high level at both of those as well. And I wanted to go somewhere big. I wanted to get out of Michigan. I didn't want to go to a small school in Michigan. And I didn't get anything from Michigan or U of M or Michigan State. But Duke offered me a scholarship, a few others, Georgia Tech and some others. And then eventually, Duke was not a very good wrestling school. So it's a great academic school, but it wasn't a great wrestling school. So I got an offer to go to UCLA, and I took that because obviously we all know the name UCLA. And that was a big deal at the time for me. But all the time I really was studying gambling. When I was in 11th grade, 10th or 11th grade in high school, somebody gave me a book on card counting. Okay. And it was one of the earlier books, and it wasn't even completely accurate. I later came to find out, but I understood it immediately. I was a game player. Our family used to get together, and we'd have these Monopoly games that would run. We'd play 6 and 7 games in a night.
Wow.
And I played pinochle at my parents' and grandparents' arm, and all this stuff when I was just a little kid, and I was a game player. And a friend of the family said, "I think you'll understand this," and he gave me this book on counting cards, and I did. It snapped right in my head, and I said, not only can I do this, but this is really cool. And I just spent all that time waiting to turn 21 while in college, taking my college courses, but also studying all the gambling books I could find.
So I don't really know a lot about counting cards, but can you count when there's multiple decks? You can do it all? Doesn't matter how many decks?
Yeah, what people don't, there's a lot of misconceptions about card counting, and people think that, the more decks, the harder it is. It isn't really harder because counting cards is sort of like counting on a number line. All you do is add and subtract numbers up and down, and you have to be able to do it through negative counts when you're going backwards. When it's negative, it means, the casino has the edge, but you've got to keep that count in case it goes positive in your direction. And it's not memorization of cards per se. It's not like you remember everything that's been played. You just have a running weighted count, kind of a weighted count of whether it's positive or negative. So you can do that with really any number of decks. The big difference between fewer decks and more decks is it takes longer to get into a position where you've got an advantage when you're playing with more decks.
Got it.
It's not harder to count. It just takes longer to apply it.
And then at that point, you also have to now fluctuate your bet, which ultimately is the key to...
That's what it is. I mean, when it comes to blackjack, when it comes to counting cards, it's really all about bet variation. Right. So you bet more into counts that are high and good for you, and you bet less into counts that are bad for you. And that's part of getting, of being a really good player, is that it's science and art. The science is learning how to do it. The art is getting away with it.
I like that.
So when you first started learning about this, where was the first casino you went to? Did you come out to Vegas? Did you go to Atlantic City? Did you go up to Canada?
Yeah, the first casino was on a game that I bought.
Okay.
Because I wasn't 21 yet, and I'm playing. As soon as I turned 21, I came to Vegas. A friend of the family, the guy who gave me the book, invited me out to meet him, and it was the Marina. It was the old Marina, which is now the MGM Grand, and long before your time, all of you guys probably.
What year is that?
That would be about 1979.
Okay.
78 or 79. And I drove out from California, and I met my buddy, and we sat down at a table, and I started to count, the deck. I was so good, in my head. And as soon as they started dealing, I mean, my head started spinning, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
Oh,
I
really?
was so confused. And I made a couple of plays, and my buddy looked at me. He just shook his head, no, no, and no. And that was my first taste of it, where I really learned there was a big difference between playing and practicing in a vacuum and actually doing it in real world, situations.
It's like anything in life. It's easy to do it in front of the mirror, but then when you're in front of the fans or 1,000 people or on the spot, you have to perform. That's slightly different.
Yeah, I remember it. I mean, I remember I was close to hyperventilating. I was so confused, and I was so disappointed in myself. And I literally had to get up and walk away and collect myself, and came back and started again, and the same thing happened again. And, that whole trip kind of went the same way. I went back, thought about it, calmed down, and did it again. And it gets easier and easier, and you get to the point where it's just so natural that you can do anything, and nobody knows.
So I mean, at that time in the late 70s, early 80s, and we don't want everyone just to think you're just a blackjack counter, so we're going to move on in a minute. But how long did you do this for? And at the time, was there other things that people... Because today, the definition of an advantage player is very different. It's not just necessarily counting cards.
Right.
How long were you doing that, and what else were people doing at that time?
Well, it was really different back then. I would say that I did it I came to Vegas for good. I moved here in 1979. And I would say that I did this professionally for probably 15 years. Wow. So probably into the 90s. All throughout the 80s, which were like really a glorious time in Las Vegas when everything was changing. And, the Mirage came on, late in the 80s and flipped the switch on the new Vegas. And I got to meet all the mob guys because they all wanted to meet the gamblers. And, once I got successful and once I got a reputation for it, the word gets out and,
Weren't you scared?
No, are you kidding? It was great. It was these were the, I know they were bad guys, but, they weren't bad to me because they wanted to be my friend, and they wanted me to teach them things and help them with things because they all wanted to be gamblers, and they were no good. Some of them were really good with numbers. I mean, if you remember the guy, you hear the name Richie the Fixer. It was Richie Perry, the guy who was in the hot tub with the UNLV guys, got Tarkanian in a whole bunch of trouble. Well, I knew Richie Perry really well, and Richie was great with numbers, fast, but he didn't really have the whole game down on how to actually do it and not get in trouble for it. Richie would just get himself in trouble all the time because that's what Richie did. But it was amazing to see his mind work and how good he was. He was a sports betting guy and how quick he was with numbers. And he had there was like a mutual admiration that he liked what we did. And I say we because I was with other guys at the time. We were all playing together. We had formed groups and teams. You hear about the MIT team from the movie 21 or the book Bringing Down the House. Well, we were a parallel team during that time, and MIT was getting all the glory, and we were probably winning more money than they were.
Have any movies been made about you?
About me? No. In our group, and nor do I expect anytime soon or in the future. But
Can you tell us more about the card counting groups and especially Alan Brown?
ooh, Alan Brown. Yeah, that's the one. I mean, I played with I played with a lot of fringy teams. That's just, you meet guys.
What is a team?
Okay, a team is when you put more than one person together. So if you've got two guys, let's say
You're all playing with a shared bankroll?
yeah, let's say me and I meet this guy named Jonathan Jossel, right? And I mean, how do I meet him? Well, I meet him because he backs me off from his casino. But no, let's say that this is before that. And I'm out playing on a game, and I see this guy on the other end of the table, and he's raising his bets at all the right times, and he's looking around, and he's maybe drinking a beer, but I know what he's doing because he's doing the exact same thing I'm doing, and he knows what I'm doing. So the way it would work is you'd usually say, there'd be a wink and a nod, and you'd meet somewhere afterwards, and you'd just talk. Who are you? Where are you from? You play a good game, that sort of thing. And you meet some guys, you like them, and you meet some guys, you don't like them. So you play with a few people for a while, and that's the team.
Okay.
Now, when you really get into a team, a really solid enterprise, you're talking about a bunch of experts who are top of the line, who have recognized this about one another, and who are all like-minded, and who are pooling their bankroll together. So instead of one guy playing on a $10,000 bankroll, you've got 7 guys playing on a $100,000 bankroll. And there's all kinds of mathematical reasons to do this, that every member of the team can bet like they're playing to that $100,000. So what it does 2 things. It does 3 things. It allows you to make money more quickly because you're betting more. It also allows you to smooth out fluctuations because it's not one guy playing, it's 7 guys playing. And when you come back at the end of the night, 2 guys lost and 5 guys won, or 3 guys lost and 4 guys won, or even if 4 guys lost, 3 guys won, and that loss is not so great. The third thing it does is it gives you camaraderie, and it gives you a way to work out new plans and new ideas and look at new games that are out there and decide how you want to play it because you've got collective knowledge and wisdom and intelligence out there. So that's why you hook up and you play on teams. There's a lot of really solid reasons for it.
Who was Alan Brown?
Alan Brown was one of the most notorious gamblers probably of all time. Now, if you want to talk about somebody who's really well known in the industry, it would be Alan Brown. And I
As
played
a card counter?
for a number of things, which I'm going to explain in just one second. I played with 2 really big teams. And the first one was the great Stanford Wong. Most of the people who have read books about blackjack know who Wong was. And he wrote a book called Professional Blackjack, which was one of the first books that I ever read. And I'm like, this Stanford Wong guy is like the greatest. He and another guy, Peter Griffin, who wrote a book called The Theory of Blackjack. And I was so lucky. I was just extremely lucky that when I came to town, I met Peter Griffin, and this isn't the Family Guy, Peter Griffin.
That's what I keep thinking of.
Yeah, this is a guy really, the original Peter Griffin, who some consider, along with Ed Thorpe, who wrote Beat the Dealer, as the greatest mathematical blackjack mind of all time. And I walked up to Peter Griffin, who I knew from seeing him at conferences, knowing that he liked to drink Heineken, and it was like getting up the nerve to ask a girl out on a date, right? And I walked up to him and I said, can I buy you a Heineken? And he's like, sure. And we sat down, we had a Heineken, we got along, and he became a good friend for years and years. But he wasn't a player, he was a theoretician. Then there was Stanford Wong, who wrote the book Professional Blackjack. And Wong was a player. And Wong called me up one day. He had heard of me and called me up and asked me to join his team. And I would say, that would be something analogous to a physics student and getting a call from Einstein. He's like, do you want to play on my team? I'm like, no. No. I was like, of course I do. So Wong put together a tournament team. And that's where we got famous, playing tournaments with Stanford Wong. And that's where I made most of my name. But after Wong played tournaments for a while, that team disbanded. And through the process of playing tournaments, I met up with Alan Brown, who ran his own team. And Alan asked if I wanted to hook up with them. Now, Alan Brown got real famous, and they did more. That team did, and I did. And that was the most prolific team I played on. That team won more than most of the people out there, most of the teams out there, including the MIT guys, more than any group that I'd ever been with. And Alan was notorious for He was the guy, along with another guy named Barry Finn, who got backroomed at Binion's Horseshoe way back when that was a bad place to be counting cards.
Yikes.
And they got taken into the back room and beaten really severely to the point where Alan had to be taken to a hospital, and he almost died.
Oh my gosh.
And that almost, I think, pretty much, except for a few renegade things that happened, that almost put an end to backroom beatings.
Right.
Because it was so severe and so serious.
It's fascinating for people to hear someone who was out in the streets living this tell that was actually happening. You see it in the movies.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't talk about it, and it's pretty fascinating to hear you.
Well, the problem was back then there wasn't so much oversight.
Yeah.
And these guys we called them cowboys. And boy, there were certainly cowboys at Binion's.
Well, there also wasn't the same technology. There wasn't the same surveillance systems. It was much easier for you guys to do it as well.
Exactly. And it was, I always made up my mind that I was not going into a back room, after I heard that story. And
you were a wrestler. Why not?
Well, it's easy to wrestle one. Not so easy to wrestle 4 or 5.
Oh my goodness.
But remember, I told you I also ran track, so I did a lot of running.
You did? Really?
I was a sprinter, and I ran away. I'm not sorry to say I ran away a lot. So
How
I wouldn't
many
end up back there.
casinos have you been? Have you ran away from?
Oh gosh, over the years, many, many times, 20, 30 times,
Wow.
But I've never been read the Trespass Act, and that's another thing. When you see things happening, that's the Trespass Act. There's 2 things they can do. There's 3 things they can do to stop you when they think you're a threat to them as a player. The first is take countermeasures on the game. So they'll shuffle up on you, or they will give you rules, like saying you can flat bet only. Jonathan just brought up in the beginning that you've got to move your bets around. You got to go from small to big in order to make money. So they tell you cannot fluctuate your bets. So they can take countermeasures on the game.
Just to interrupt, that's what we do here mostly.
Well, which is the right way to do it.
Yeah, we're not going to kick you out, but we'll say you just can't go down once you go up.
And that's fair enough. And anybody who takes an attitude with you for that is just an amateur or a guy who's just got an attitude problem. Because if he got picked off, it's his fault. And if he's told, instead of being kicked out or read the Trespass Act, which I'll get to in a moment, if he's told simply you can flat bet here and you're allowed to stay and have a beer, then he's been caught, and he should acknowledge that and either leave or sit there and flat bet. But he would leave.
Exactly.
But that's the first thing. They can stop you on the game. Second is they can just tell you to leave. And the third thing is they can tell you to leave with prejudice, which is to read you the Trespass Act, saying that you cannot come back on the property again or you will be trespassing and subject to being arrested. So I've never been trespassed. I've been backed off a lot. I've been told to stop playing and whatever. I've never been trespassed. And part of that is because part of the job is to see heat coming, to see that there's a problem and get out of there before it happens. So I always did. Maybe they wanted to trespass me, but I was long gone. So I never did get trespassed or back rooms.
But I want to go back to what I mentioned earlier was this is all blackjack. I think one would be really interesting is if you could just define, in your opinion, what is an advantage player, and what kind of advantage players, what else were they doing besides blackjack? Because today it's way more sophisticated.
Yes.
And we deal with it on a regular basis.
Yes. And, well, don't get me wrong. We didn't only do blackjack. We've been talking about blackjack, but we did anything that we thought we can get an edge at. And that's what advantage play is. Advantage play is just what it sounds like. It's playing games only where you have the advantage and not the casino. All right, casinos are advantage players from Go, and everybody knows that because all the games are engineered so the casino has the edge. In most games, that edge cannot be changed. There's nothing you can do aside from cheating to change that edge. But there are certain games where the edge can fluctuate and swing to the player's favor. Blackjack is the most famous of them, and that's why we speak of that. But it also happens in video poker. It happens with progressive machines. It happens with casino promotions. It happens with just about any game that you can think of. There can be circumstances where the edge will switch to a knowledgeable player. So advantage player or an advantage player or an AP, as they're referred to now, for convenience, is any person who plays these games, who finds these games and plays only with an edge or when they have a perceived edge.
And it's intelligent. I mean, it's some sophisticated people. It's impressive the way they figured out some of these loopholes. I mean, I've had to learn the hard way. Not growing up reading books like you did and necessarily understanding all of it. To see when we had a young kid here about 7-8 years ago did a new Royal membership rewards club, and if the points that you can earn are out of whack with the theoretical loss on the video poker machine, you're going to get beat up. Yeah. I mean, you're going to get guys. and we had guys playing for 24 hours straight. They were holding the machines. They had teams waiting to play the machines. I've seen that down the street at other casinos now, and it's pretty amazing how quickly the word spreads as well.
Yeah, and it's, well, originally Advantage Player was coined, the name Advantage Player was coined by a guy named Steve Forty. Steve Forty is among the top 1 or 2 or 3 recognized players of all time. Like somebody once said to me about Steve Forty, they go, he's like Rambo. He could go into a casino under any conditions. You could put him in a loincloth and put him in a casino, and he's like Rambo. He'll figure a way to beat him. And it's true. Some of these guys are just absolutely brilliant. But Steve coined that phrase, and it was all encompassing. So it included cheating. You were an advantage player. Cheaters were advantage players because they were playing with an edge.
Well, it's a very fine line, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's completely different. Our teams, we never cheated, ever.
So let me ask you a question. If you're manipulating a promotion to be in your favor, is that AP or is that cheating?
If you are doing things like using multiple cards, that's cheating.
Okay.
And if you're using multiple identities to do it more than once and double and triple dip and more than that, then that's cheating.
I agree with you.
If you've looked at the rules and said, if I play it this way within the rules and I get 5 times what's intended, then that's just outthinking you. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you to discover that and shut it down. So that's where I see the difference.
You're exactly right. I agree with you.
Well, over time, that the definition of advantage play got softened to mean playing legally and not to encompass cheating. But originally, it did encompass cheating as well.
There was a time I called you for, I think, help, to be honest with you. You may not have known it, but I was asking you what was going on because we had a promotion. It was the 500 on us sign-up promotion. This was probably 5 years ago. And we couldn't figure out what was going on because the numbers looked great. But we knew they weren't great on the machine levels. And these guys, what they had figured out was they could show loss on this certain type of machine,
right,
but then pull out the card.
Card pulling.
Now, to me, that's cheating. But it's very genius, and I couldn't do anything about it. But and the reason I say cheating is because they were bringing in multiple people to do it on repeat. Yeah. They weren't just doing it one time, but they would show loss on the initial play because of the card, but then they would pull it out and then use the bonus to then recoup those losses.
Yeah, and card pulling is really close, but I don't consider card pulling cheating. Interestingly, I've never done that either. I've never done card pulling because A, it's a little too close to the edge for me, and B, it can get you in a whole lot of trouble. It can really get you in a lot of trouble, and I never wanted to get in a lot of trouble. I really didn't. I just wanted to win the game fairly and keep my relationships good with the casinos if I could. And this kind of goes to another thing, what Jonathan just says. Okay, he called me for my advice or my take on what was going on. This is the smartest thing that a casino operator can do, is befriend people who are knowledgeable in this area. Now, there's no way that I would ever give up something that I was sworn to secrecy about, or that I would pinpoint, come in and say, yep, he's doing it, because then I would be ostracized from my own group. I would never do that. But I would absolutely, people I'm friends with, like Jonathan and some at other casinos, I used to know Mark Brandenburg really well, went over at Golden Gate, and I knew George Maloof. I know George very well. And when these people call me for advice, of course I try to help them. And I really think that rather than treat advantage players poorly and like criminals, you should befriend them because A, they won't play in your joint, and B, they'll help you when they can.
Totally agree. And thank you.
That's how you stayed away from the mom, from the back room.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you still play now, or do you consider yourself retired?
I'm not allowed. Interestingly, I'm not allowed to play table games. And it's because I'm too well known now, because I've done too much TV and I've done too much talking about it. And, I kind of came out, so to speak, and people have seen my face on the Travel Channel a million times. So I'm treated differently when I go into different places. Some people treat me like I'm an ATM and I can go in there and just win at, on demand, and I can't sit down and do anything. I couldn't even play craps, which is a game that I can't beat. Nobody can beat without cheating. I don't believe in controlled dice rolling. I don't think it works. And, there's no way to beat that game, but I won't even be allowed to do that because it's a table game. But especially blackjack, if I sit down, I can't really play for long. even if I'm fooling around with friends for nickels and quarters, I'm not allowed to do it. And if I'm asked to leave, I'm just always very friendly and say sure. And I didn't, I meant no harm, just having fun with friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I am allowed to do lots of other things. Sports betting, you can get an edge, and I do a lot of sports betting. Video poker, you can get an edge, and I play a lot of video poker. So I do these things, but more on a vocational level now, not on a professional. Because when I did it for the 15 years that I told you, that's what I did. And I mean, I didn't start publishing until I was no longer playing full-time. I was playing full-time. That's how I made a living. That's how I paid my rent. That's how I bought food. And that's the definition of professional, is that's how you make your living.
Mm-hmm. So during those years, you became an expert on finding all the best Vegas deals.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want people just to think you're just a card counter, so we'll move on to your other life.
Well, here's how this happened. My father was a university professor. He taught at University of New York, Albany. He taught at Fresno State. He taught at Wayne State in Michigan when we lived there. And so he was an academic, but he was a tough, I can say it because I'm Polish. He's a tough Polak from Detroit. He grew up in the streets, and he kind of understood my way of thinking and stuff, being a wrestler and all of that. So he was an academic, and I told him I was going to drop out of college without graduating, which I did. I actually did go to Georgia Tech for a short while without enrolling. Then I went to Duke. Then I transferred to UCLA. Went to a couple junior colleges along the way, and went all the way right to the end. Maybe had a half a year or a year to go, and turned 21 and dropped out. And my dad wasn't real happy about it. And he said, it doesn't make any sense. And I said, it doesn't make any sense to be in school. I need to get on the streets. I can learn more there. And nothing I've learned in any of these great institutions is going to help me for what I really want to do. And he was like, well, I trust you and whatever. And I said, but look, there's more to it. And he says, for instance, and I said, there'll be things I can do. If I'm successful, there will be things I can do that are related. And he goes, such as? And I said, publishing. And I'll never forget. He looked at me, and we were driving, and he got this big smile. And he said, now that makes sense. And that's what he said. He goes, now that makes sense. So I told him, I'd already had in my head, I knew from reading and just from observing that this wasn't something that I could or wanted to do forever anyway. And that if I were to gain all this knowledge would be valuable somewhere. So I always had the idea that I would publish at some point. And so that's what I did. And the first thing that I decided to do was that I realized that when I wanted to come here, when I was living in Huntington Beach, I couldn't get any information. Of course, it was 1979, and desktop technology had not been created yet. But I couldn't find any newsletters. I couldn't find any information. I mean, there were a few magazine articles. There were books, obviously, but nothing really about Vegas and what was going on. So I always had in the back of my mind that wouldn't it be cool to start a newsletter about what goes on in Vegas and the things that I see when I'm in casinos every single day, right? And all the deals that I could find and so forth. So that was in the back of my head. And real early on, when I was still playing professionally, I started formulating an idea to do the Las Vegas Advisor, which was, and still is, a newsletter about how to get the best of Vegas when you're just a tourist. And we talk about mathematical concepts of gambling in there a lot, but it's all cooked down so that average people, not average people, but people who are not into it at the level that I was can understand it. But we also look for best deals everywhere else. Where's the best happy hour? Oscars. Where's the best steakhouse? Where's the best? Who's got the best show for the money? For years and years, I would put the show at Harrah's. I'd put Matt King over anything for the price. It was a $14 ticket or $15 ticket. You see Matt King and you got 2 drinks. And I mean, a lot of people don't know about that.
But the book, from what I understand, and you call it Las Vegas Advisor,
mm-hmm.
and it's a newsletter, and then it's also an annual book. Is that correct?
Well, the newsletter is the Las Vegas Advisor.
Okay.
But I soon learned that no matter how clever I thought I was, or how good I thought the advisor was, or whatever, people weren't going to pay just to read what I had to say. So if I was going to make a living doing this, and I was going to make a go of it with a publication, I had to come up with something different and something more. And that's where the Member Rewards book was born. And the Member Rewards book, I think, Jonathan, is what you're talking about, which is an annual that comes out where we have coupons and deals from casinos all over Las Vegas that give people 2-for-1s on food and, shows and discounts of various sorts, and gambling, coupons that give them literally the edge when they're playing those coupons. And I will say this, I mean, this will sound gratuitous, but one of the greatest supporters of this has been Jonathan Jossel and the Plaza. I would say that our deals at the Plaza are probably as good or better than any place else in town. So I really do appreciate that, and our customers appreciate that.
Thank you. That's not paid advertising, but thank you for saying that. If you do want to advertise with us, you can advertise on this podcast so more people buy the monthly subscriptions. But
I'll keep that in mind.
but I wanted to ask you: have the offers from the casinos changed due to COVID? Or prior to COVID? You know, we talk a lot about value, and obviously at the Plaza we're still doing match play. We're doing the free bets. I know others are doing some more creative stuff, like the first 22 you get your money back.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But are the casinos a bit more liberal with this stuff, or are they tightening up on it? What's going on? What's the industry doing?
They're tightening up like crazy. And I was very surprised by this. I was certain that we would come out of the box after the shutdown with everybody being loose as can be, trying to bring people back. But it's been exactly the opposite. It was an amazing challenge to put together a credible member rewards book this year. And we did. We've got a really good book. It's got a lot of value in it. But the thing that saved it is that, the member rewards book last year in 2019, or 2020 rather, from 19, had 24 deals on buffets. Well, there are no more buffets.
Mm-hmm.
There's one buffet, which is at South Point. And so there were no buffets. So right off the bat, a quarter of the book is already gone. And a lot of it was the same, and also no more shows.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so no buffets and no shows. So now a third of the book is gone. So what saved it? What saved it is the only promoting that the casinos are doing on the same level or more is in gambling. And they're doing their lucky bucks and their match play and things like that. So we were able to put together a very credible and a very good group of coupons for casino play, and a lot of people really like that. And then there were enough really good deals. We've got a deal here, we've got a deal in Oscars, and we've got a deal at Pop-Up Pizza. And again, the Plaza was really good in the way they did it. And there were other casinos. Ellis Island is another one that works with us like that. Downtown Grand works with us like that. And there are enough of the good ones to overtake the bad ones. Golden Nugget. There's some bad ones. Golden Nugget. I'm just saying, why should you even go there if they're not going to give you something back? And our people look at it like this, and our people have enough money to be able to pay for something and be in a club like this, so they're good players, and they look at it like that. Well, if you don't want me, then we don't want you.
What do you charge for the club?
It's 37 or 50, but they're 50 a year. But they're always, even 50.
Sorry, you said 37 or 50?
Yeah, it's 37 if they don't want to get it mailed to them.
Oh, got
and
it.
It's $50 if they want to have it, come to them. But these are also people that buy all kinds of products from us and everything else. They're really, it's a higher echelon group in terms of, their logistics financially. So they're good customers, is what I'm saying.
It's not all your AP friends.
No, it's really not. And unfortunately, those are the guys that make me mad. And my friends don't abuse it, but the guys who are not my friends, who want to be APs, will try to do to us exactly what they do to you. They'll try to double up and buy 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 books.
You're exactly right. And that's what I wanted to say earlier, but it's those people that ruin it for everybody else.
Absolutely.
Because they take away the value for a lot of people.
And we police it extremely hard. There's another book that copied us. That was the American Casino Guide. I've got nothing against them. They do a fine job. And Steve Borey publishes that, and I'm friends with Steve. I was just on his podcast last week. But they don't police there. They just put it in a book and they put it out on shelves, and people can buy as many of those as they want, and it's up to the casino to police. We police it very, very stringently in that we do not let people bring bums in off the street. We do not let people double up. And when they object, I say, come with me, and I take them into the conference room, and I say...
Take them into a back room.
I was going to say, he's taking them right to the back room.
And I pound the living heck out of them. No. And I say to them, I said, listen, I know exactly what you're doing. I said, I invented the moves you're trying to make right now, which I didn't. But I said, I was around doing this when you were in diapers. And they're like, and that's why they'll say, that's why I can't believe that you're giving me a hard time about this. I says, look, when I did it, I didn't cheat. Just like I told you guys, I played by the rules. I didn't cheat. Same goes here. The rules are 1 per person, 2 per household. That's it. That's all you can have, and there's no more. So yeah, I see. Yeah, I feel your pain.
It's going well though. You're growing it nicely.
No, we got hammered. We got really hammered this year. We had a lot of people did not renew. We had a lot of people. Our numbers are way down. and because people aren't coming to town.
Yeah.
And so
It'll come back, though.
I
As
think
the
it
town
will.
comes back, it'll come back.
Well, what we're doing is it allows us to pivot. I mean, it's just like any business, good business is done during this time and during other slow times, during the recession. We saw a lot of that during the recession when all of a sudden, prior to the recession, we had 19 employees at Huntington Press. And then the recession hit, and now we have 5.
Wow.
And we use contractors because that's what the world learned. So what did we learn from this? With member rewards and what we do with our newsletter is we finally made the move to go to a remote type of redemption. So we're now doing things with phones and all. And soon that's the way we'll be doing it. We won't be ripping out coupons and all, which allows us to do room
coupon
deals
codes.
and everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was I think I read this, but was Jean Scott part of your team originally?
No, Jean Scott was, she was her own team.
Was she a contributor, though, to LVA, or she was a part of the LVA?
She was a part of LVA.
For anyone that doesn't know, could you give us a 2-minute summary on who she was? Because I think it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, Jean Scott, a very amazing person. When I was doing The Advisor, I started doing The Advisor seriously in the 1990s. So like I said, I played for about 15 years. Then about the mid-90s, my main endeavor was the newsletter and publishing books. And Jean Scott was a subscriber who came to me and kept writing me ideas and things that she had found and correcting me on things, saying, no, it's better if you do it another way, And so Jean Scott and I became friends, and she wrote a book for us called The Frugal Gambler. And Jean Scott, at the time when we became friends, was a 61-year-old retired school teacher from Indiana. So
it's amazing.
And an amazing advantage player, but that's what she was, a school teacher from Indiana, 61 years old at the time. And
she went 49 nights straight with comps?
She went 49 straight. That's the big article we did on here. Is 49 nights, 49 free, 48 free. That's what it was. She had to pay for one night in there. And that was way back at a time when it wasn't as easy to do as it is now with room comps and things. And Jean wrote the book Frugal Gambler for us. And it is our biggest selling book of all time. It's our only book ever to sell over 100,000 copies. And it went to number 2 on Amazon it was for number 2 for 2 days, and it could not get over one of the Harry Potter books.
Wow, that's a tough one to overtake.
And Jean Scott became just an expert at machine play, and she didn't play on teams, she played with friends and things like that, so maybe they had a deal here and there, but she played on her own. She played big money, she made a lot of money, and she was just very clever.
Beating video poker.
Beating video poker, yeah.
Incredible. And she basically announced she was stopping because the casinos tightened up too much.
Yeah, and that was just only a mild dodge. I mean, it's partly true. It's mostly she retired because she's now in her 80s, and she's got family and grandkids and great-grandkids, and they're all in another state, and she wanted to go to that state and be by her family. But a big, the exclamation point on the decision was the fact that it's just getting tougher and tougher to beat the more sophisticated casinos. And you guys are sophisticated. You're able to pick these people off. And there's other places where it used to be a cakewalk, and now it's a chore. And she just didn't want to do it anymore.
Is she a contributor on the website?
Yeah, she just she does a blog for us called The Frugal Gambler, and she blogs about once every 2 weeks. And she just blogged yesterday, and she said, "Stay tuned. I'm getting cabin fever. I'm going to be hitting some casinos down where I'm at." She's in Georgia right now, so she'll be hitting some East Coast places. Nice. And everybody always wants to look forward. They call her the Queen of Comps, so they want to look forward to what the Queen has to say.
What do you think the best deal in Vegas is right now?
The best deal in Vegas, for my money, has always been, and I'm sorry it's not here, but it's always been the steak dinner at Ellis Island.
You've always had that number 1 on your charts.
It's been number 1 almost for as long as I can remember.
What is it? What's the deal?
It's a filet cut sirloin, which means it's a sirloin steak that's really cut thick. Usually when you get a steak special at any of these places, back a long time ago and now, these are real skinny types of things. This is a nice thick, almost like a filet mignon, although it's sirloin, and not porterhouse or New York. But it comes with a big fresh salad. It comes with vegetables. A roll, I guess, or something like that, and it's I think it's $12.99. But if you play $5 in a machine with your player's card, it's $7.99.
Wow!
So all you got to do is run $5 through, and you get $5 off. So you get $7.99 for this incredible steak dinner which is as good as anything you're going to get for triple the price, and it's available 24/7. So that's always been our number one. Haven't found one that can beat that yet. Jonathan's tried a couple of times, but not yet.
What about downtown? Do you have anything downtown that you recommend as a good value, good deal?
Downtown in general is a good deal.
Yeah.
I mean, what we recommend about downtown is just come down here rather than go to the Strip. I mean, and I'll tell you what, I'm sure you guys won't mind me saying this, it's not just a Strip anymore. I mean, Palace Station has done a complete about-face. Call it sour grapes if you want. After years and years of Palace Station being one of our biggest contributors, they pulled out completely this year in the member rewards. So I don't feel any reason to not talk about what they're doing, because they've changed everything around. They're ripping and tearing. They reconstructed their slot club, so everything's costs twice as much now. They're taking out their best games. They're no mailing people right and left, meaning they don't send them any vouchers in the mail if they think they're good players or if they've had a good result. And I'm really disappointed in what Station Casinos is doing. Boyd, not so much. Boyd is still, they devalued their slot club as well. But a lot of the programs are still going on at Boyd. But nothing's like downtown. I mean, the deals you can get here at at the Plaza, at Binion's, at Downtown Grand, at El Cortez, at D, at Golden Gate. Even Circa's talking to us now that we're going to a mobile. Circa's even going to do a deal with us, and they didn't want to do any deals with anybody.
That's great.
So it's just downtown. I mean, downtown is a place to be.
You're often quoted as verifying that downtown has looser slots. Is that something that you spend a lot of time on?
I only do it when I've been asked to do it, and it's not even something we charge for. It's like if we've had a few times. Usually El Cortez, more than any other, has asked us to do a verification for them, and it's completely on the up and up. And in order for us to do a verification, they have to open their books to us, which is something that you guys don't like to do. You don't want anybody seeing what's going on. But, we sign all the non-disclosures, and I promise them that nobody will hear. And then I can make a comparison with other parts of the Strip through gaming numbers that are public. So I can't say El Cortez is better than Golden Nugget or El Cortez is better than Downtown Grand or anything like that, because I don't have their books, and I've promised that I won't disclose that information. But I can absolutely say El Cortez is X amount looser than the Strip, or X amount, in general, or X amount looser than downtown in general. I can make those kinds of comparisons. So we've done that. I've done that for them. I've done it for the Palms. I've done it for Rampart and a couple of others.
We opened up some questions to the public, and I would like to ask you them.
Sure.
So Debbie H. wants to know, with the opening of Circa and Downtown Grand's new tower and the Plaza's announcement about Greyhound, which downtown properties are next for upgrades and renovations?
Maybe change your question just to a more holistic thing about downtown. And you've mentioned that it's great for value, but do you have any concerns that downtown's going to get overly beautified? And I think a lot of people worry that downtown will lose its charm if it gets overly beautified, obviously.
Yeah, I think the downtown has done everything that it's supposed to do. I think downtown is the coolest. I mean, this is where I come hang. When I'm just going to fool around, I come here. I haven't mentioned the Four Queens yet. Four Queens, excellent gambling product. No resort fee at Four Queens. There's just lots of good things down here. Interestingly, I think that Circa has gone too far. I think that Circa with its pricing has gone too far. I think that Circa with charging for, and I'm good friends with Derek Stevens. Derek's from Michigan. And we met each other years ago playing in tournaments when Derek used to just come out here and play against me in tournaments. And Derek was a pretty good player, but he wasn't on our level. And Derek told me later, he says, I used to watch you play and go, there's something different about that dude. And Derek's a smart guy. But I think that Circa is, it looks a lot like a strip casino, but it's not on the Strip. Mm-hmm. And I don't like the fact that they charge for parking and there's no way to get that, validated. And I think some of the price points are too high. So I think that that's a level that they're going, but that's nothing but good for the other places where people are going to come to see Circa and then they're going to go, well, I'm going to go play somewhere else, or I'm going to go eat somewhere else where it's more affordable. I don't think that downtown's getting too fancy at all. And I think that some of the upgrades that they're doing, like what they're doing at El Cortez, which is kind of muted, but it gets nicer and nicer at El Cortez. I can remember when you didn't want to set foot in El Cortez. It was a nasty place. And it's nothing of the sort now. It's a nice fun place. And I can say the same thing for the Plaza. The Plaza does more and more and more to make you want to come in here. When then this used to be one of the lower end properties of Vegas, of downtown, and it's not anymore. So, it's hard to say what would be next because they're all making moves, and hardly anybody is not doing anything at all, to be honest with you.
Terry R. asks, what are your thoughts on how Vegas used to be compared to now and the pros and cons?
Yeah, everybody I talk to goes, it was way better back then. And I'm the only one who argues with them and says, nope, it's way better now. And I really do feel that. I feel there's more opportunity now to do more things. You still have old Vegas in downtown and with some of the places on Boulder Highway. And when you go into Henderson, hey, go to Henderson. Go into, some of the joints down there. And it's like you step back into old Vegas, right? Emerald Island. You want to get some great food and a great steak. You want to play penny slots. It's go back to Henderson and you got old Vegas. But go to the Strip and see some of the shows. If you're the kind of person that can pay $150 for a ticket, you can't get this kind of entertainment anyplace else. Go to some of the greatest steakhouses literally in the world, if not the country. As far as I'm concerned, most of old Vegas is still around if you want to look for it. And a lot of things that weren't around then are around now. So I like Vegas now, to be honest with you. And I'll like it better next year, and I'll like it better the year after that.
I'm with you, man. It's coming back strong.
Yeah, I think it's gonna.
Sure.
I think it's gonna.
Okay. Tell us about Mattress Mac.
Mattress Mac. My man.
Yeah, I guess I love the guy. I love the story of the guy, but for anyone that doesn't know, why don't you just tell everyone who he was or who he is and what your connection was?
Okay, Mattress Mac is a guy named Jim McInvale, and he runs a furniture empire. He's a furniture salesman, and he's got a little empire in Houston, Texas, called Gallery Furniture. And Mac is a promoter extraordinaire, and the way he got so big is by making outrageous offers to his customers, like, okay, come in and buy X amount of furniture, $2,000 or $3,000 worth. And if the Houston Astros, because they're in Houston, if the Astros win the World Series, you all get your money back. And he did these sort of things for years while the Astros were just, doormats in Major League Baseball and never had to give the money back. Well, a couple of years ago, the Astros were pretty much the best team in baseball. And Mac was on the hook for, we've still never disclosed the number and no one's ever got it right, but I can tell you it was tens of millions of dollars.
Wow.
All right, so the numbers that's being thrown around is 11 to 14 million. It was more than double that.
Wow.
All right, and Mac had to do something because this was going to put a serious dent in his bank account if he had to give back, X amount, 20-some million dollars worth in rebates. But it was too late. The Astros were too good, and he couldn't do the traditional thing, which would be go to like Berkshire Hathaway and get insurance like they do at a golf tournament in a hole, $1 million for a hole in one, but they get insurance against that. So it was too late for him to do that. So I'd heard of Mattress Mac, that he'd come to town and he'd made a couple of big bets here and there. And one day I get a call from a guy who identifies himself as a Las Vegas Advisor subscriber member, but also Mattress Mac's attorney. And he says to me, he goes, here's our situation. We're on the hook for all this money, potentially if the Astros win, and we can't lay it off with insurance. He goes, is there a way to create our own insurance, our own hedge through the sports betting markets?
This is insane. Yeah. This is a movie.
And I said, there absolutely is. And I said, he said, will you do it? Will you work with us and do it? He goes, of course we'll pay you. We'll make a deal and all of that. And I said, if I can bring in my main guy, who's a guy named Frank B. Usually, if you see me hanging around here and eating in Oscars or something, and I'm with a taller guy with black hair, Italian guy, that's Frank. And Frank's just a wizard when it comes to sports betting. And I said, if I can bring in my quarterback here, I said, we'll take it on. And I called Frank, and he goes, this sounds great. Let's go. Let's do it. So Matt contacted us. We found out, we got all the details exactly like a casino opening its books. We found out exactly what we had to do. One of our best friends is a former lead trader on the arbitrage team for, I think it was Morgan Stanley. And so we brought him into the team, and we effected a hedge for this guy that put him in a position where by the time the Astros went all the way to the final last game, Game 7 against the Nationals, it didn't matter whether they won or lost. Mac was going to finish exactly where he was going to finish, and he was going to have to refund all the money but make a whole bunch of it back, or not have to refund anything and lose a smaller amount in the wagers that we made for him. So we got him perfectly hedged.
So you got down close to $15-20 million, you're saying?
We got down, this I can tell you, because it was all kinds of different leverage and all.
Right.
The total number of bets that we got down, I believe, was $28 million.
Wow.
That we bet for him.
That was the game went to Game 7, and each team won on the road. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
That was the only
and
the only
the
World
Nationals won on the road in Houston, which no one could believe.
Yep, it was the only World Series ever that went 7 games with all winners being on the road.
Yeah.
But see, through the course of all of this, we were making bets in between. We would get to situations where, they went to Game 5 in a 5-game series with Tampa Bay, and they went to Game 7, I think, or at least Game 6 with the Yankees. And all of these were what we call click games that we were then betting on the other side. So we were winning as we were going. We were, replenishing our bankroll, and it was a very complicated matrix of wagers that we had made. But when it was all done, we got him exactly where he needed to be.
Well, that's what good strategists do. And we actually probably could do another episode with you, Anthony. We're going to have to do another episode with you because Oscar's is about to open for dinner, and they're wanting me out of here soon, so we can let guests in. But when you were getting down that $28 million, out of curiosity, were any of the books soliciting you? Did they want your business, or was some of them saying to you, "No, thank you, get out of here"?
Most of them said no, thank you.
Really?
Yeah, which is really, really stupid because these bets were not. They were like, "Well, you're an advantage player. We don't want to bet with you." I said, "You're not betting with me. I'm constructing a hedge for a guy who has no choice but the way he has to bet." And you've got the best of this, believe me.
Yeah.
And they still wouldn't do it. But the ones that did want it were all the up-and-comers, all the FanDuels and the DraftKings. And, I called Matt Kalish, who was one of the 3 founders of DraftKings. That's one good thing, benefit of what I do. I know a lot of people. I called Matt. I go, "You want $1 million bet that you can promote?" Matt says, "We'll take up to $3.5 million." So we got $3.5 million DraftKings on one bet.
Anyone here in Vegas? William Hill took some of it, didn't they?
Well, there were three guys that stepped up. One was originally Jimmy Vaccaro from South Point. He talked to the boss there, Michael Gahn, and they took the first $250,000 bet. And then the biggest taker of bets here was Derek. So Circa took the most. And right on their heels was William Hill.
Fantastic. Wow. Well, I hope we'll be able to have you back out here.
Maybe I can be here on time next time.
That would be nice. I was going to make that joke, but I thought I would call you out. But we definitely have more stuff to cover. And
thank you so much. This was so fascinating. You can stay up to date with Anthony on Twitter at @LVA_tweet.
Thank you.
We'll be back again soon. But in the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about On the Corner of Main Street. And of course, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's @PlazaPod. And on Facebook, find us at Plaza Podcast. Or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan @JonathanJossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.